I was having y'all. It's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and I got this big smile on my face right now because the Commanders got a package of great news as far as Washington Commanders injuries, man. And maybe not all of it is like necessarily definitive, but all of it is positive. Every injury we're going to talk about today is a positive update, at the very least progressing the right direction. But one thing that is definitive that we're going to dive into in this video is Jayden Daniels has been medically cleared to play against the Chargers. He is your starting quarterback once again. 5 is back. Also, even on top of that, Samuel Cosmi is now back practicing with the Washington Commanders. Got to dive into that in even longer than the Jayden Daniels part, because I want to go through the timeline of like how we got here, how it's been over the past couple of weeks, like every little small update we've been getting. I want to do like a full last few weeks timeline on Samuel Cosmi and whether we think he'll even play against the Chargers or not. And then we also have other injury updates like John Bates and Noah Brown and stuff like that. And since all of these injury updates that we got came from Dan Quinn's press conference before practice while he was speaking to the media, we also have a couple of other quotes that aren't injury related that I feel like are worth diving into. So we're going to dive into all of that and more, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Appreciate y'all for staying tuned in. Shouts out to my watch to the end gang, man. WTTEG in the building. Shouts out to my late night crew. Even though I'm recording this at 1:10 p.m., I'm pretty sure there are those of y'all out there that are still gonna watch this late night, man. Vampire hours, bro. And then shouts out to the notification gang. Shouts out to Noti gang that are there immediately after I put these videos out, man. Now let's go ahead and dive into this content right now. Let me go ahead and give y'all all these updates. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so first up, I feel like we got to talk about the Samuel Cosmi news because the Jayden Daniels one was kind of like expected. Like, I thought that there was maybe even a chance that he may suit up against the Raiders. Then I was thinking, okay, maybe there's an even better chance that he suits up against the Falcons than after he didn't play against them. I already felt like I was like halftime at the Falcons game, like, well, at least we're getting Jayden Daniels back for the Chargers game. And it felt pretty like safe to say that and to feel that way that, yeah, Jayden Daniels is going to play against the Chargers. He'll definitely be playing by then. How healthy he'll be when he's doing it, if he's going to have a leg brace or anything like that, that's a whole nother discussion. But I already felt confident that Jayden Daniels would be back for this upcoming game against the Chargers. But Samuel Cosmi's different. You know, technically, with him being placed on the PUP list before the season started because of his injury back in January, that, you know, technically he'd be allowed to practice maybe as soon as this week going into this Chargers game, early October. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he would automatically practice. They probably could have just kept him on the PUP list and not even started his 21-day window. So that must mean that it's great news that they apparently did. So yes, we have great Samuel Cosmi news and real definitive proof of progress here. Not just a bunch of speculation, definitive proof, because the Washington Commanders, as of today, have allowed Samuel Cosmi to return to practice and opened his 21-day window. So now Samuel Cosmi will practice for the first time since tearing his ACL back in January in that game versus the Denver Broncos. I mean, now granted, and shouts out to Scott Jennings of Hogs Haven for breaking this down, the Commanders have been dealing with a lot of injuries to start the season, man. I mean, who you telling? But they're getting some mixed news on some of them. Samuel Cosmi tore his ACL during his divisional round playoff win over the Detroit Lions in January. He had successful surgery, and I feel like we need to emphasize that because sometimes it's not a 100% guarantee that people have successful surgeries. Sometimes you may have an unsuccessful surgery, but at least, you know, even though we got terrible news that, you know, and this is back in late January, that Samuel Cosmi would be out for a long time with the torn ACL, at least the first original good news that we got on the situation was that his surgery was successful, so he'll be able to return as quickly as humanly possible. And He was working to get back onto the field this entire time since January. And the Commanders now have officially opened his 21-day practice window, allowing him to work with the team before he is activated from the reserve PUP list, which will force him to actually have to take up a roster spot. So once we finally cut somebody to make room for Samuel Cosmi, that's when we know it's real. That's when we know he's playing. Washington now has 3 weeks for Samuel Cosmi's ramp up to return. Otherwise, according to the NFL rules, to kind of stop teams from abusing this rule and just allowing guys to just start to practice out of nowhere, even though they're nowhere near back healthy, just kind of like trying to maybe cheat the system, bend the rules a little bit. If they don't activate him to the 53-man roster, by the time that 21-day window ends, which is 3 weeks from now, then he'll be placed on like a permanent IR or something like that and won't be available for the rest of the season, kind of to like punish teams for trying to, again, bend the rules. The Commanders, knowing that, they're not trying to bend the rules. They've opened this 21-day practice window for a reason. It sounds like he's for real ready to go. Now, granted, Nick Allegretti began the season as the Commanders starting right guard, but Andrew Wiley took over for him in week 3. And of course, Chris Paul also replaced starting left guard Brandon Coleman as your starting left guard now. And remember, Brandon Coleman was just starting left tackle last season. Like, our offensive line is all jumbled. Then you trade for Laramie Tunsil to start a left tackle for you. You draft Josh Connolly to start a right tackle for you. And now when Samuel Cosmi returns, he'll take over his spot at starting right guard, with Andrew Wiley moving to more so like a backup swing tackle role. And then Trent Scott has also been playing as like your 6th defensive lineman the last 2 weeks. And maybe Cliff Kingsbury's trying to warm us up to a potential Trent Scott receiving touchdown, just like against the Bengals last year. Remember, that was Jayden Daniels' first passing touchdown of his NFL career, a passing touchdown to a backup offensive tackle. That's actually remember that, just in case you ever end up in like a trivia situation, who was Jayden Daniels' first passing touchdown to? Remember that it was an offensive lineman, and it was Trent Scott. I prefer him as a backup interior offensive lineman. Either way, we've been using him as a third tackle occasionally the past couple of weeks. But again, this offensive line is all jumbled up. You're going to potentially go just right guard spot alone. Forget all of the other shuffling going on with the offensive line, especially the left guard spot. And Chris Paul, the fact that he's still starting over Brandon Coleman is very telling. That wasn't just a 1 week thing. That is until further notice type of thing. And if, Chris Paul continues to play well and Brandon Coleman doesn't show enough, maybe that's permanently Chris Paul's starting left guard job. But right guard specifically alone, Nick Allegretti as your starter at some point during training camp, and then this went all the way into the first couple of weeks of the regular season. Then, going into that Raiders game, we decided to start Andrew Wiley over Nick Allegretti. And then as soon as Samuel Cosmi comes back healthy, I'm not saying it's necessarily likely that it happens as soon as this week in this upcoming game against the Chargers, but that's still just in a few weeks span, within less than a month and a half, about prediction-wise, projection-wise, that you've had 3 different starting right guards with neither of those right guards gaining new injuries. You just benched Nick Allegretti for Andrew Wiley, and then you're going to replace Andrew Wiley for Samuel Cosmi whenever Samuel Cosmi is healthy enough to play. It's a really interesting situation. But I also want to dive into this whole timeline of the situation, because back on September 19th, when talking about a potential Week 5 return for Samuel Cosmi, Nikki Javala said it was unlikely. She was asked, what's the latest on Samuel Cosmi? Is he expected to be ready after sitting out the first 4 games, or will he more than likely come back like later in the season? She guessed that it would be later. Even if he's medically cleared by week 5, I'd be shocked if they threw him in immediately. It would put him at risk and the rest of the line at risk as well. Cosmi hasn't taken a live rep since January, so he'd need a ramp up to get back into football shape. How long that will take is unclear. Coach Dan Quinn has been a stickler about return to play processes for players dealing with injuries, and there's no way he'll rush it with Cosmi. Certainly not after Washington gave him a $74 million extension last year. So, Nikki Javala is saying that even though he's allowed to practice now, we may go ahead and utilize this entire 21-day window, and he may not be back to play until, again, if the Chargers are definitely in doubt, the Bears game may even be in doubt. He probably may not return until the end of that window, which is the Cowboys game, once they finally add him to the 53-man roster, when they're basically required to, because again, according to IR rules that I gave y'all earlier, PUP rules and all of that type of stuff. So I'm honestly, just based off of Nikki Javala bringing up good points about how much money they're paying him, Dan Quinn's history with how he treats injuries, I don't think you get Samuel Cosmi back to the Dallas Cowboys, but that's also the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, you do not get Samuel Cosmi back into the Dallas Cowboys game, which is October 19th in Dallas. But at the same time, I also think that's the most likely projection of when we'll get him back. I mean, it would be nice if we got him back the week before against the Bears, which is October 13th. And of course, it would be like a dream come true if he plays this weekend. I just doubt it. So to me, personally, based off of the things that Nicky Jhabvala is saying, and I agree with how Dan Quinn handles injuries, and of course, he hasn't had any live action since January. So even if he weren't recovering from a torn ACL, even if he was just sitting around and holding out this entire time for like a contract or something like that, just a hypothetical to throw out there, if he hasn't been in any live action since January, probably wouldn't be good to throw him out there against the Chargers just off of that alone, let alone recovering from a torn ACL. So, and then also the practice time to remember, Samuel Cosmi has not practiced to the left side of Josh Connolly yet. He and Josh Connolly have never had a practice rep together ever. Not one snap, ever. So there's some chemistry things they got to work through with right there. So again, I think Bears game, best case scenario, he's ready by then. But I think more than likely he'll be there by the Dallas Cowboys game. I think that's the most likely scenario. But then on September 22nd, to go ahead 3 days from the Nicky Jhabvala report, we also were told by Dan Quinn that Samuel Cosmi is, quote, not far away, unquote, and returning back to the field. And then on September 23rd, Nicky Jhabvala pointed out that John Bates and Samuel Cosmi, both guys of which we are hoping can return from injury and play for the Commanders as soon as possible, were doing ballet with their daughters on John Bates' Instagram story. The story is expired now, so I don't even have like the footage to show y'all, but that was still some pretty good news at that point in time, because they both can't be too far from returning from leg injuries if they're moving around that much and having that much fun and freely and stuff like that. Now, of course, doing ballet with your daughters is completely different from playing in an NFL game, but it also shows that they're able to walk around and actually, you know, move fairly well outside of NFL contact. So still somewhat positive news. Not like this huge news, this huge step in the right direction, but you know, it's still somewhat positive news just going through the timeline. Because now you move on to the next day, September 24th. Dan Quinn said that they are, quote, aiming, unquote, to get Samuel Cosmi active quickly, and that the right guard is pushing hard with his rehab to return to play. The full quote was, quote, we're working hard. And he is really putting the work, so that's what we're aiming towards. Then, as we get into next week, we'll see if he's ready to take the next step, which now, as we know today, we found out he is. But this is another guy who is just all off season through the summer, put the work in, and so we are at the last little bits of that. You try to simulate as much as you can, simulated sets, but he does need to be back in the team setting. So as soon as that can happen, that helps him in a normal ramp-up process to unquote. And again, he's emphasizing ramp up process. So I don't think Samuel Cosmi is just going to come in immediately after 1 week of practice playing in a game, this upcoming game against the Chargers. Again, Bears best case scenario, but I think the most likely scenario is the Dallas Cowboys game later, 3 weeks from now. And also, now we got to talk about it. Because if Samuel Cosmi does come back, in whether it's week 5 against the Chargers, week 6 against the Bears, or week 7 against the Cowboys, what is your starting defensive line? You would just assume that Laremy Tunsil just started left tackle. At this point, the way things are going, Chris Paul is just starting left guard, Tyler Biadasz is just starting center, Samuel Cosmi just starting right guard, and then Josh Connolly is just starting right tackle. I think on paper that is a ridiculously talented offensive line, and I think that could be one of the big reasons that this season finally turns around now that you finally have your Pro Bowl right guard back. Laremy Tunsil is a perennial Pro Bowler at left tackle. He's been doing his thing. Tyler Biadasz is a Pro Bowler at center. He's been doing his thing. And then, of course, Samuel Cosmi coming back as your Pro Bowl right guard. Those are 3 Pro Bowlers right there, with 2 guys that have some real talent to them, and Josh Connolly at right tackle, Chris Paul at left guard, or even if you want to throw Brandon Coleman in there as part of the left guard population that we have at our disposal. That is a really talented defensive line. Nevertheless, that Andrew Wiley and Nick Allegretti, who could both be starting for other offensive lines around the NFL, are now both backups. Trent Scott is also a backup that when he had to fill in for Samuel Cosmi at right guard last year in that playoff game, it felt like we didn't even miss a step offensively. And then you also have George Fant, who's a backup swing tackle that has over like 1,000 snaps, or I think over 2,000 snaps maybe even, at both left tackle and right tackle. This offensive line is going to end up being not only one of the deepest on paper, but also one of the best starting offensive lines on paper once everybody's fully healthy and ready to go. So I'm excited. But again, now catching back up to today, The Commanders, on top of allowing Samuel Cosmi and, opening his 21-day practice window, they also signed cornerback Antonio Hamilton Sr. from the practice squad, so expect him to potentially play in this game against the Chargers behind, of course, Lattimore, Amos, Sam Rastil, and Noah Benogany. Antonio Hamilton Sr. will be your fifth corner that's probably rotated in occasionally, especially in like more obvious passing down situations. You need more defensive backs on the field, we'll see, or special team stuff. Then they also placed Javonte Jean-Baptiste on IR officially, so he'll miss a minimum of 4 games, but of course, as a torn pectoral injury, usually those are season ending. You don't see them until the next year, but granted, Jonathan Allen tore his pectoral injury last year and somehow came back the last couple of games of the regular season and played for us in the postseason as well. Maybe Javonte Jean-Baptiste has that same recovery process. This is the same medical staff and physical therapy staff, so we'll see what happens there. And of course, Robbie Chosen, who I talked about yesterday, was added to the practice squad. Now, before we dive into Jayden Daniels and the other positive injury updates that we got for this Commanders team, man, shouts out to Sleeper, man. With them, you have a chance to 1,000 times your cash on daily fantasy football, bro. In Washington football, even after a loss to them, Falcons, bro, it's really hard not to be optimistic about what this team's going to be now that we're finally getting back healthy. You have your top 5 quarterback in the NFL and Jayden Daniels finally returning back. You have a Pro Bowl right guard that's going to potentially catapult this offensive line to being one of the best in the NFL just by himself alone. I'm super excited about the future of this team. And even like Deebo Samuel, who's been the best player on our entire team so far through the first few weeks, man. When we get him going, keep him going, Terry McLaurin back healthy, Luka McCaffrey's developing, Jalen Lane's working on it as well. This team could be really deadly moving forward. And you can pick on stats for Commander stars like these guys, like touchdowns, passing yards, receiving yards, fantasy points, and more for up to 1,000 times payout on Sleeper. If you're right on your picks, you can win big money on it. You can use promo code SCORE, that's SCORE, like you see on the screen, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Or you can even just click the link at the top of the description of this video and every video on live stream I'm doing all season on this run to the Super Bowl. And of course, like I keep telling y'all, man, it's not just the Commanders in the NFL, man. NBA is coming back soon. We have a NBA preseason game tomorrow, October 2nd. So you can even play daily fantasy with the NBA, MLB, NHL, college football, college basketball, and even the WNBA that are in the playoffs right now, all on Sleeper, bro. And you know me, man, I like to take a look at some NFL until I get to my 8 leg that I like to do, where I'm trying to turn a little bit of money into a lot of money, like I did week 1, where I turned $10 into 800. Before I get to that, I just like to have a little bit of fun real quick. I like to do some NFL popular duos. So, and you know me, man, I like to go to the NFL popular duos, and I'm looking for the one that's the highest risk, but also gives you the biggest bang for your buck. Right now, available, for example, from them, just a hypothetical, they have a 3.72, where they have Cam Scatterbo scoring a touchdown. And we talked about this in my video last night. Shouts to the late night crew that saw that, where we have Cam Scatterbo. I think he can get a touchdown against the New Orleans Saints. This defense is not only bad, but they've also given up on the season. And he already had a touchdown against the Dallas Cowboys and the Kansas City Chiefs. Why would he not be able to get one against the Saints defense that's worse than the Kansas City Chiefs defense? And again, a defense not only just worse on paper, but also is giving up. I think Cam Scatterbo can get him one, especially with the injuries to the running back room as well. So he's going to get more carries. And then Trey McBride has been a fantasy, just savant. Now, granted, he hasn't been getting a lot of touchdowns, but I think this is the week that he gets on one. The Tennessee Titans have a very weak defense. And if he got a touchdown against the San Francisco 49ers, I believe he could get one against the Tennessee Titans. And here, you could turn 5 into almost 19. You could turn 10 into 37. You could turn 20 into 74. You could even turn 100 into $372 if that's how you're feeling. If you're feeling risky, you want to take a chance on both of these guys getting touchdowns this upcoming weekend, there you go. Again, shouts out to Sleeper, man. Now let's get to the rest of this injury report, especially some great news Jayden Daniels wise first. Man, I'm so happy to see this, bro. And again, this is something I assumed would happen. I was very confident that this would happen, but already 12:30 p.m. I'm emphasizing the time. Matter of fact, I'm gonna be real specific. How about 12:29 p.m. Wednesday, October 1st? Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels has been fully medically cleared and will be a full participant in practice per Dan Quinn, bro. I'm emphasizing and being very specific about the exact time that it was reported, because we're going to look back weeks from now and be like, that was the start of the Commanders turnaround. This is when they knew they were going to be Super Bowl contenders again, bro. Jayden Daniels is back, man. JD5 is back. The king is back. The top 5 quarterback in the NFL already. The best rookie of quarterback in NFL history is finally back, bro. And here's Dan Quinn giving you the announcement himself right here. First, he announced the Samuel Cosmi 21-day practice window, and then he kind of just nonchalantly just runs through the fact that Jayden Daniels has been medically cleared, even though maybe he's just exhausted, because Jayden Daniels has probably been cussing him out every chance that he's gotten, and maybe Dan Quinn's just tired of it. He's more so relieved than excited. We're more so excited. He's probably just like, man, now I don't got to hear Jayden Daniels' mouth no more. Here's the clip of Dan Quinn announcing Jayden Daniels has been medically cleared. It's a quick 27-second video right now.
We'll begin today with some good news. Sam Cosmi will begin his 21-day window. He got injured in January, and he has worked his ass off to get back on the field with his teammates, so it'll be great to have him back at practice. Also said I'd give you an update on Jayden. He has been medically cleared by the doctors. He'll practice full today. As far as other injuries and practice updates, we'll put out the injury report later today. And
like I updated y'all last night, Jayden Daniels apparently had a strong workout on Saturday. So he was limited in practice going all the way back to the Friday before the Raiders game, which made me think that, hey, maybe he may play against the Raiders. Then he was limited all week, except for they just went ahead and rested him on Friday, that week leading up to the Falcons game last week. And I was like, well, maybe there's still a chance that he plays when it was Thursday. Then once they rested him and he didn't practice at all on Friday, I knew that was cooked. But now we were hearing that after the game against the Falcons, Dan Quinn said that Jayden Daniels had a strong workout on Saturday. So, even though he rested on Friday, apparently Saturday they were able to kind of push it, even though it was like a full-blown practice. That kind of already let us know it sounds like he's really on track to being our starting quarterback for the Chargers game, and he'll be back to practicing as of Wednesday. And so Dan Quinn said earlier today in the same press conference that he let us know that Jayden Daniels is medically cleared to return. He said that Daniels has had a steadfast approach to his recovery. Jayden Daniels is going to try to push it. If anything, you have to slow him down. You have to stop him. It's never a lack of motivation. If anything, Jayden Daniels is too willing to put his body at risk and to bring himself potential worse harm by trying to get back onto that field and compete for this team, bro. If anything, he's too competitive, which is hard to say. But I mean, again, remember that time that it was like last week, and this was before he even found out he was out against the Falcons. So I know he was extra. He was even more mad about that. But when he was asked in his press conference soon after the Raiders game, he was asked about what happened. How did Dan Quinn even tell you the news that you were not going to play against the Raiders? How did you receive that news? What was your reaction to that? And then Jayden Daniels basically said, you're going to have to ask him that, because and he didn't say this exactly, but basically it was probably some words in there and some things that he said that probably weren't camera and media friendly, maybe not necessarily family friendly to share to everybody, but basically he was livid. He was very upset, and that's something that he just feels like should stay private within the team. And then again, just to hear that he was told again going into that Falcons game that he wouldn't be able to play, and that he wasn't even allowed to practice the Friday leading up to it. I know he was upset, so I'm just happy to hear that he's good to go. He will be your starting quarterback as of today at practice. Of course, after practice, we'll hear more. We'll get the official injury report and stuff like that. Maybe I'll find some time to update y'all on that officially later on today, but I'm still happy to hear, bro. And so, just to let you know, Jayden Daniels hasn't had a full practice and suffering his knee sprain versus the Packers on Thursday Night Football in Week 2. Daniels has missed the last 2 games, but is now on track to return to his starting spot versus the Chargers in Los Angeles on Sunday, which will be a home game for us. Because first of all, the Chargers already don't take over stadiums. Even at home in Los Angeles, other teams typically come in and take over their stadium. The Commanders travel very well. We traveled well for the Falcons game. We just couldn't get a lead to really show it, to really take over the noise in the stadium like we potentially could have. But on top of the fact that the Chargers don't typically have a real home field advantage anyway, this is Jayden Daniels' home, bro. He's going back home. He's the hometown kid. He's the hometown hero. There's going to be Jayden Daniels Arizona State jerseys. There's going to be Jayden Daniels high school jerseys from back in his time growing up in the IE and stuff like that. He's taking over the stadium, and I feel like, it would have been nice for him to have against the Falcons, but if we're talking about a perfect fairy tale script that you're writing, You know what I'm saying? I feel like him returning back after missing a couple of games against the Chargers back at home, that's as poetic as it can possibly get, bro. I mean, the unanimous ovation that he's going to get as if it's a Commanders home game is going to be astounding. And again, it's going to be people that are not even Commanders fans that are going to be rooting for Jayden Daniels just off of the fact that he is the hometown hero. He's the one putting it on for Southern California, representing them very well. So that's going to be an amazing feeling, man, when he goes back out there. Not only just as a Commanders fan, but as a Jayden Daniels fan. It's going to be a lot of us in unison that are all just excited to see him back, bro. Even some Chargers fans are going to be like, man, I hate the fact that I got to go against them, but that's my dog right there. I know how that feels, man, going against Georgia Bulldogs every week, going against guys that are born and raised in Atlanta or the state of Georgia every week from different teams. I know how it feels, and none of those guys are like Jayden Daniels level, so I can only imagine how Chargers fans are going to feel in that game, man. That's going to be very conflicting right there. And then shouts out to DC Sports Dre. He said it's going to feel like opening day again on Sunday with Jayden back. Marcus held it down admirably, but having your dynamic star player out there hits different. I completely agree. Marcus Mariota hooped, but I do feel like there is a slight difference between, at least a minimum, a slight difference going from Marcus Mariota to Jayden Daniels. And even though Marcus Mariota and Jayden Daniels, neither of those guys play defense, Jayden Daniels is far better equipped to win a shootout than Marcus Mariota. Again, shouts out to Mariota. You held it down. You won us that Raiders game, and you scored 27 points against a sorry Falcons team. That should have been enough to win, but hey, man, it's time for Jayden Daniels to take over and lead us to these playoffs, man, and potentially trying to even win this division. Let's try to go on a Super Bowl run, man. It starts now. And now for other Washington injury updates as well. Dan Quinn said on the other injured players, including Terry McLaurin, Noah Brown, and John Bates, just one general collective response and update for those guys. He said, quote, all are trending up. We're making good progress with those guys, unquote. Nothing like specific or definitive necessarily. And again, we'll see what happens when we look at this practice report, especially when I'm looking at Terry McLaurin, like what's going on there. Like I already told y'all last night, John Bates said with JP Finley and B Mitch, he feels like he's going to return in this game against the Chargers. So, I feel good about saying that Jayden Daniels and John Bates are returning against the Chargers. I don't think it's very likely that we get Terry McLaurin nor Samuel Cosmi, but it's not impossible. All of this is good news, man. This is all way better than the news that we were getting heading into this Falcons game, I'll tell you that. Also, the Commanders, Dan Quinn let us know they will practice in LA on Friday, and Dan Quinn said that will not mess up evaluating their to be determined injuries, since players will be assessed through Thursday already. That's McLaurin, John Bates, Noah Brown, and even Percy Butler as well. Now, other Dan Quinn updates on top of this, because he spoke to the media before the practice. He gave us some injury updates. He also gave us some other interesting quotes. First of all, he said that Robbie Chosen has had experience with some of the coaching staff and had an excellent workout. That's why he was able to beat out Willie Snead and another wide receiver that worked out as well. And we brought in 3 receivers to work out. Robbie Chosen was the one that stood out the most, and that's why they signed him to the practice squad. And Dan Quinn already said that he's working hard to learn the system. So I'm not expecting, like I said last night, my late night crew, like 2, 3, 4 a.m. whenever I ended up putting that video out there, I don't expect Robbie Chosen to play as soon as this upcoming game against the Chargers, but maybe like in a week or two, maybe he'll finally be out there. Also, Chick Hernandez brings up a great point. I did not even realize it was this crazy. But within just the last 2 years, Robbie Chosen has gone from the name Robbie Anderson to Robbie Anderson, like going from Y to IE. That's insane in itself. To Chosen Anderson to now Robert Chosen. How did we get here? That's 2 years, 4 name changes, but only 5 receptions. You have almost as many name changes, government name changes, as receptions you've had in the last 2 years. That's actually really insane, man. So, hey, come in here and focus, bro. Stop focusing on the name changes. Focus on balling out for the Commanders, bro. We need it. And Jayden Daniels, if any quarterback can revive him, it's Jayden. But at the same time, it's still Robbie Anderson, like I broke down, man. At age 32, I don't know how much he has left in the tank, but he was good just as recently as 2022, so we'll see what happens there. Also, Dan Quinn was asked if this team can turn things around. He said, quote, I've got plenty of confidence in that, unquote. And I do too, bro. I'm right with him when he says that, and that's the reason I wanted to bring it up. That, like, I do feel like once we're fully healthy, now granted, a lot of teams around the NFL are unhealthy. Everybody's dealing with injuries, but I mean, come on, bro. A top 5 quarterback, I mean, take any of these top teams around the NFL and just take their starting quarterback away. Now, granted, Marcus Mariota is the best backup quarterback in the NFL, but come on, man. Take away their best receiver like we had to deal with Terry McLaurin now. Like, and your Pro Bowl right guard wasn't there from the start of the season. Like, I just feel like there are a lot of injuries that we're dealing with right now, let alone losing your starting edge rusher and Dietrich Wise injured reserve, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, his backup. Now you lost him to the injured reserve, and Will Harris, your starting safety, also was hurt too. And then even Jonathan Jones, he's supposed to be your fourth cornerback in rotation. He's hurt. I feel like once we finally start to get everybody back, but most notably just getting Jayden Daniels back by himself, just him isolated, is going to make a huge difference for this team, bro. Not even just on the field, like productivity, but even just the belief that, man, we got Jayden Daniels on our team. Even like defensively, we have Jayden Daniels on the other side. We just got to do our job. He's going to handle the rest. Like, there's a whole different spirit and atmosphere with Jayden Daniels on the field, bro. Also, Dan Quinn says, I don't feel teams are targeting Marshawn Lattimore. I don't know. When I'm looking at the tape personally, I do feel that way, but he said that Lattimore is playing better than perception, but the big mistakes just make the headlines. I can kind of see the argument for that, but I mean, Lattimore has been getting targeted. It seems like every third down that the Falcons needed, they would just target him, and either it's a reception or a penalty. But Dan Quinn said the teams aren't specifically targeting Marshawn Lattimore, and when asked about Lattimore's play generally, Quinn said that the cornerbacks and offensive tackles make a lot of good but unnoticed plays, and mistakes at those spots often stand out more than the good plays. And that is true. That's the nature of being a corner and an offensive lineman, especially specifically an offensive tackle. Every time you're making a good play, unless it's an interception, people don't notice. Once you make a bad play, now all of a sudden you're having a terrible game. At the same time, though, I kind of push back on that and feel like, nah, Lattimore has been having some bad games. Good first week, bad second week, good third week, bad fourth week. Maybe he's only good on odd number weeks. So maybe this upcoming game is against the Chargers, he bounces back again. We'll see. But Dan Quinn also just said, quote, that's part of living life outside, unquote. And it comes with the territory. I'm pretty sure Marshawn Lattimore is not surprised at all of the negative responses he's getting from the fan base over the internet and stuff like that. That just comes with the territory. Either you're the greatest corner ever or you're the worst corner ever. It's rarely a middle, bro, because your good stuff, like said, goes unnoticed, but your bad stuff gets magnified and exploded on the internet. So it just is what it is. A lot of it is narrative, but at the same time, even from me watching the tape, Lattimore, be better, bro. You have not been good. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed video. Please still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Shouts out to my Watch to the End gang, man. WTTEG in the building, man. If you're watching me right now and you still see me and hear me, salute to you and appreciate you personally. Also, shouts out to my late night crew that's going to end up watching this 12, 14 hours from now. Shouts out to the Noti gang. Shouts out to the Notification gang that's watching this immediately after I upload it. Y'all are the MVPs as well. And of course, make sure you leave a like on the way out. Stiff arm that like button on the way out before you leave out of here. It's free and it means the world to me. And also, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. How do you feel about Samuel Cosmi coming back? If you had to guess right now, when will Samuel Cosmi make his 2025 debut? Do you think, even though it's highly unlikely, do you think there's a chance he could play against the Chargers this weekend? Do you think maybe the Bears game the week after that? Or do you think at the very latest, the Cowboys game is when he's going to make his debut? Also, let me know how you feel about the Jayden Daniels, the fact that he's been medically cleared. Let me know how excited you are about that. There isn't even much analysis behind that. That's just pure yay emotion. Like, yes, we got our guy back. You know what I'm saying? And then also let me know how you feel about the other injury updates. John Bates being likely to return against the Chargers, whereas Terry McLaurin and Samuel Cosmi not likely, but at least we're going the right direction there. And at the very least, it sounds like Terry McLaurin will not have to miss a couple of months like some people may have speculated way back on like last Wednesday, last Tuesday or something like that. So let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Try my best to read and reply to as many comments as possible. Leave a like on the way out. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.